I was sitting with my lawyer at the defense table in the county courtroom. I looked up as the jury was about to be called in. My lawyer said I could be looking at several years in prison if I was convicted of the crime I was accused of. I did do it, but had no choice. Yes, I got a little carried away, but what would you have done in my place? I guess I had better start at the beginning to explain. I should give a little background so you know why I sit here today. My wife Carrie and I married later in life. She was 32 and I was 34. Carrie was always a blonde looker, and I fell for her the first time I met her. After a few rough months, we started to date seriously, and finally married the next year. We had both been in a few relationships, and I thought that being older and having been around the block a few times, it would work out great. It did for the first 3 years or so. Carrie didn't work and stayed at home. We talked about having kids, and she seemed to like not working, so I didn't press it. Financially, we were doing well, and I was looking forward to starting a family. I didn't want her to start a career and then have to stop to raise a family. Carrie was always happy and outgoing. That was the problem. Most men thought she was coming on to them, and I almost got in a few fights because of it. Sometimes I think Carrie would start something just to get me going, but it never worked. I hated to fight, and always tried to avoid a confrontation with anyone. I always tried to turn the other cheek. That was my problem until 2 months ago. I would always walk away from a fight or a personal challenge. Stay with me because I am not a wimp like it appears, but I was following my dad's advice he gave me when I was younger. I was always good at school until we moved to my current city, another state away from my old one. I had to leave my teachers, friends, and everything I liked about my old town behind me. I was in 8th grade, and the new school was large and dangerous. I tried not to tell my dad so he wouldn't feel bad about moving. He had no choice financially. My mom had died 2 years earlier, and Dad was still getting over it. Well, the school had what I would call the alpha male bully in charge. His name was Tommy Billinger, and he had it in for me from the first day. I was just leaving school my first day when a big guy caught me before I could get on the bus. At first I didn't see him, and when I was pushed to the ground I was looking up at a 6'2" monster. Well, that is what he looked like to me. I was a small at 5'3" at the time. I now stand about 5'7". He towered over me on the ground, and even had 2 friends next to him a few inches shorter. They ordered me to stand up and to give them my backpack and any money I had. I slowly stood up, and it was the most afraid I have ever been in my life. At that moment, I pissed my pants from being so scared. Looking back, it probably stopped me from getting a beating by these school thugs. "What is your name, wimp?" Tommy asked me with malice in his voice. "Peter Huckleby," I answered with real fear. "Well, Peter, you just got a new name at school. Your name from now on will be Pissy Pete. Hey, everyone, look at Pissy Pete. He just wet his pants like a baby," Tommy told the increasing crowd around me. I looked around and everyone was laughing at me. I was so horrified that I ran home and didn't even get on the bus. From that day on, Tommy never left me alone. He was a junior in school, so I had to put up with him until he graduated a year later. My life was heck for those first 2 years. No girl would date me because I was Pissy Pete, and no matter what I did, that name stuck with me. School was something I used to dread. I would be picked on, pushed around, beaten up once in a while, and generally abused. I thought I was a good guy, but you couldn't tell by the treatment I was receiving at school. I prayed for the day when Tommy would graduate. The entire time at school, I never saw Tommy show me or anyone else he picked on any compassion. He would enjoy the terror he inflicted on people and was getting real good at it. After Tommy graduated, school settled down, and by my senior year, only a few butthole were calling me Pissy Pete. I graduated with honors and was valedictorian of my class. I went to a good college and became a design engineer. I tried to tell my dad at that time about the problem, and he said he would go to the school and take care of it. That's all I need. I thought Daddy coming to my rescue. I knew it wouldn't help, and would probably cause me even more trouble. I suggested I would try it a few more days and see if the teasing stopped. He accepted this, and I lied when he asked me again a few days later how school was going. School was shitty at best. Well, after my first 2 months at my new school, I had a really crappy day. By the time I got home, I was so wound up I could be dangerous. My smaller and only brother took something of mine. To this day, I do not even remember what it was. All I knew was he was in the line of fire. We started to argue with my dad sitting in the next room. Well, all the bullying and problems in my life came to a head. I pushed my brother against the wall and aimed my fist at his head. He just ducked aside at the very last second, and I hit the wall with my fist. We lived in an older house, and the walls were made of plaster with wood slats behind it. I put a 3-foot hole in the wall and even broke 2 of the boards where my little brother's head had just been. Well, Dad came in the room and went crazy when he saw the damage. My brother was crying and he was yelling, "You could have killed your brother in your room right now. You are grounded." For the next 2 months, I was grounded and still being bullied at school. Those were the 2 longest months of my life. My dad showed me that my temper could get me in trouble and maybe kill someone. I knew deep down if I had hit my brother, I could well have killed him. That lesson has stayed with me to this day. That is why I would rather walk away than fight. Well, now that I have given you the background on my life, I will explain what started happening about 3 months ago. I usually call home before lunch, so Carrie has it ready for me. I forgot to call her today. It is a 20-minute drive each way, and this helps me since my lunchtime is only 1 hour. I showed up at my regular time for lunch. As I walked in the door, Carrie was on her hands and knees scrubbing our living room rug. There were size 13 footprints of mud on our rug. The tracks looked like they went from our front door right to our back bedroom. "Carrie, who made the big mess on our new rug?" I asked her. "Leo, our building superintendent, hired a new guy who was checking the smoke alarms. He came in with dirty feet and didn't wipe them off," she answered me back. The answer almost sounded rehearsed. "Okay, but I am going to jerk at Leo the first chance I get. We have white rugs if he doesn't know it," I replied back. "Do not worry about it, Peter. I will talk with him. Let me handle everything," she told me. After that, I ate lunch and didn't think any more about it. Later that week, I saw Leo coming out of one of the other apartment buildings. I called him over to talk to me. "Leo, how the heck are you doing? It has been a while since we talked," I told him. We talked about some sports and the general weather, and suddenly remembered what I wanted to see him about. "Hey, Leo, the other day your new guy came in to check the smoke alarms in my apartment and tracked mud from his shoes all over my nice white rug," I informed him. "First of all, he is not my new guy," Leo told me with more than a little annoyance in his voice. "Sorry, Pete." He paused for a second to keep his temper in check. "But this guy has already gotten to me, and I usually do not let anything bother me. But this guy does. His name is Tom. Something. It begins with a B. I do not remember. Corporate hired him after I was telling them I needed more help. He was to be my part-time man doing the things I needed done." Leo informed me again. Well, this butthole comes in the first day thinking he was my boss. He started telling me my schedule and his, as well as how things were going to work around here. Leo kept telling me. I informed him in no uncertain term of his place here, and he didn't like it in the least. He had wild eyes like he could turn on you at any minute. I was going to give him his walking papers right then, but he still had that look in his eye. I think if I fired him, then he would have beaten me up, or even worse. I am going to let corporate know and have them fire him. He is a really big guy who is supposed to be good with a wrench. If you ask me, he is a grade A butthole from the word go. Leo told me, "Besides Pete, I did the smoke detector checks 3 weeks ago. I told your wife the 2 back smoke detectors needed new batteries. I returned and even put them in for her. Tom had no reason to check the smoke alarms. That is not his job." Leo told me with no love in his voice. It made me wonder after I got done talking to Leo, but it slipped my mind until another incident happened a few weeks later. I was going to get another pair of sneakers from my closet and remembered I left them under the bed. As I looked under my wife's side of the bed to grab them, I saw a pair of muddy shoe prints, size 13, just like the ones I saw my wife cleaning up a few weeks ago. The only way they could have been made was if the person who wore them took them off and stored them under my bed. My wife usually did that with my shoes out of habit. These seemed to be the only tracks she didn't clean up. That same day, I got some socks from my drawer and noticed they were not mine. My feet were never that big, size 13, and they were a color I never buy. I even tried them on, and it was comical. At least it was, until I really thought about the implications. Now, how did someone else's socks get in my sock drawer? The more I thought about it, the more worried I became. Then my neighbor, Mrs. Adams, who lives right across the hall from my apartment, asked me one morning, "Is your apartment fixed yet?" "I do not know what you are talking about, Sally. I didn't know anything was broken in my apartment," I replied back with a questioning look. "Oh, it is just that the new big fix-it guy was always repairing stuff in your apartment. You better ask your wife." She finished with a really strange look at me. Her expression told me more than I wanted to know. Sally was a busybody, but she always knew what was going on in the building. This may have been her way to tell me to watch out. I had been wondering about my wife's faithfulness for a few months. Nothing concrete, just little things here and there that said she was cheating on me. There would be phone calls that would hang up if I answered. I thought I once smelled cologne on her clothes. I asked her point blank one day, and she said I was her only love. She didn't act nervous or anything. I accepted her answer and tried to put it out of my mind. I should have pressed the issue more, but I didn't. I trusted her completely. Now anyone reading this story is saying to themselves, "Boy, he sure is a dumb butt." To my defense, I loved Carrie and trusted her. Yes, I was love blind. I also think deep down I didn't want the confrontation with my wife yet. That is where things stood until the day my life changed forever. I was feeling sick at work, so I decided to go home early, even before lunch. I walked into my apartment, and I instantly knew something was wrong. We live in a one-floor apartment. Our bedroom is in the back, so you cannot hear if anyone knocks on the front door or if someone comes in. I started to walk back to the bedroom when I heard voices coming from there. Carrie was moaning loudly, and another male voice was saying how nice her privates felt. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know how bad it really was. I lost all love for my wife at that moment. The hate didn't start until I saw who she was with. Carrie. "I cannot believe your husband doesn't know what a fool you are. If you were my wife, I would lock you up every time I left. A privates like yours is 1 in a million. Besides, you give the best head I ever had. You could suck a pool ball through a straw," the stranger said laughingly to Carrie. "Shut up, Tommy, and just fudge my brains out. I do not want my husband to catch us, and he may come home for lunch," Carrie told him. "Who cares, Carrie? You told me he was a wimp and didn't fight at all. I will kick the crap out of him and then fudge you while he is lying on the ground below us," Tommy said bravely. "I just do not want to hurt him, Tommy. He is passive, but really is a good guy after all," Carrie said, defending me, sort of. You could tell by her voice she didn't even believe her own words. That really hurt more than I can say. The woman of your life thinks you are a coward and a wimp. There are no words to describe what I was feeling. To this day, I do not remember doing it, but luckily, just as I got by the bedroom door, I started my little recorder that does video and sound. It is smaller than a cigarette lighter, and if you put it on your shirt pocket, you wouldn't even notice it. The recorder was for work. My new boss Bill was stealing my designs, calling them his. He made me look bad at meetings so he could look good. I started recording our conversations. My good friend suggested this. I recorded the conversations so I had proof of my boss's deeds or misdeeds. He would throw me under the bus, as they say, at least once a week. He thought I was a wimp also. The recorder was going when Tommy threatened me. I heard that voice before, and a flood of memories came to me at once. "No, do not tell me that's him," I said to myself. Sure enough, I walked right up to the bedroom door, which was open, and saw my old high school bully Tommy Billinger screwing my wife from behind. That image will always be in my mind till I die. How do I describe what I was feeling at the time? I stood there and saw my wife of 3 years being screwed by the one person I hated most in the world. I hated my wife now, and I especially hated Tommy at that moment. I just froze and kept looking on as he took my wife over and over. Finally, I came out of my memory nightmare and had enough. I shouted at Carrie, "What the heck do you think you are doing? Get the heck out of my apartment!" I shouted this at them both with the most anger I ever heard in my voice. The look on my face must have said it all at the time. I was the maddest I have ever been in my life. Carrie, however, almost had a look on her face that said, "So what, wimp? You are not going to do a thing anyway, are you? You never do. My wife looked startled and very surprised for only a few seconds before she gave me that look. Tommy just looked at me and started to laugh. Carrie, do not tell me you married Pissy Pete. Oh my God, I thought I had something to worry about, he said to my wife, laughing even harder. She looked at Tommy with a questioning face, trying to make sense of my new nickname. Carrie, your loser of a husband, was in my high school. He pissed his pants the first time we ever met. He obviously didn't tell her how we met. He only put in that little bit of information to make me look bad in front of my wife. I could see my wife looking at me like I was less than a man, so it was working. I used to beat him up once a week, the little crap. Listen, wimp, when I am done screwing your wife's privates, butt and mouth, then you can take over for a real man. Until then, wait outside until I am done, he ordered me. My wife just looked from both of us back and forth and didn't say a word. I knew right at that moment I would never be married to this woman after today. Oh, by the way, Pissy Pete, I am on the clock right now, and my salary comes from your rent payments. So to add insult to injury, you are literally paying me to fudge your wife right now. How does that feel, you little crap? Tommy bragged to me as he asked me the last question. He turned back to my wife and started to fudge her again. She just looked away. I will say this only one time. Get the heck out of my apartment, I yelled at him. I was ready for anything Tommy had to give me. I was so mad at that moment I was almost shaking with rage. Well, Pissy Pete got a set of balls, he said sarcastically. I will take care of that. I gave you the chance to leave, wimp. Now I am going to give you an butt beating like you never had in high school. Tommy told me this as he pulled his privates out of my wife, got off the bed bare, and went for me in the doorway. It's funny, but sometimes you see some old person from school, and you still think they are the same person who you went to school with. That is where Tommy made his mistake. After high school, one of my college teachers got me into some martial arts classes to help with my self-esteem. I developed a liking for it and started to train in judo, kickboxing, and several forms of karate. I would work out at the kickboxing club twice a week and hit the gym at least once a week. I have kept up that routine every week for over the last 16 years. Carrie never went with me, so she just thought I used the stair-stepper or something at the gym. I would spare at least twice a week, though. My teachers had a hard time at first trying to get me to spare with someone. I still could see my brother's scared face when I tried to punch him all those years ago. Well, they told me it was like learning to read but never opening a book. A good analogy, I thought. Finally, I started to spare and got quite good at it. I would pull my punches and never really tried to hurt anyone. They said my strength was in my speed. I could land a heck of a punch if I wanted to, though. The past came right back to me at once. I thought for a split second to run away. The little boy being terrorized by the big bully was still there somewhere in me, but something more powerful was emerging. All the anger and rage I had carried inside of me all these years burst out all at once. A bear Tommy went for me with a big punch. He was really very slow for his size. I moved to the right 6, and he missed me completely. That is when I went after him. I pushed up on his elbow the same time I delivered a blow to the top of his wrist and hand. This action caused his elbow to snap with a gross-sounding crack. I didn't care, and was just getting started. After he cried out in pain, he tried to lunge at me with his other good arm and body. I just stepped aside and directed all his weight into the doorframe I was standing next to. His head hit it with another crunch. Well, my wife was screaming from the bed, still hiding under the covers with just her head peeking out. I ignored her and kept to business. Tommy got up again. I was impressed, but he was not bright enough to stay down like he should have. I moved to the middle of the room so I had a clear fight area. If Tommy had been standing, I do not think I could have reached him with my foot, but he was slightly bent over, so I spun around and hit him with the hardest roundhouse kick I ever did. I felt my wingtip shoes push several teeth from his mouth, as blood also came out. He screamed, and I used that split-second delay to launch my knee at his chest as he was bent over holding his mouth with his only good arm. I could feel several of his ribs crack, and I decided I had enough of this nonsense. I swiped his legs with mine, and he went down at once. I remember my instructor telling me, "If you get an enemy down, keep him down." I jumped on his 2 ankles with all my weight, and I felt at least one crack. I placed several well-aimed kicks to his nuts, and I could feel them get squished as my fancy dress shoes did their business. He was still bare and moaning when I drop-kicked him in the head. The room went suddenly quiet, except a low, quiet moan from Tommy. I couldn't resist the temptation to give him a matched set, so I broke his other arm in 2 places. I also jumped on his kneecaps to make me feel better. It did wonders for my attitude. "There, Tommy, now that is insult to injury." I told him this as I kicked him in the side of the head once more as he passed out. What I did may sound cruel, but I never ever remember Tommy giving anyone a break or just leaving some unfortunate student alone. He was 100% pure butthole, and I felt no mercy towards him whatsoever. He was an enemy of the worst kind, and I treated him as such. All this time Carrie was just looking at me with fear and wonder. I had never so much as raised a finger in front of her the entire time she knew me, not even when other men were trying to pick her up. Sometimes I think she did it on purpose to see what I would do. She really thought that I was a wimp. Well, I could see by the look on her face, and she didn't think that anymore. She just saw me kick the crap out of a guy who had over 8 and 100 Bs on me. Every time you flirted with other guys in front of me, I knew what you were doing. One time at the bar downtown, I didn't think you even wanted me to pull you away from one of those apes. Well, every time you were wondering if that other guy was bigger or stronger than me, he probably was, and I could do to all those losers the same thing I just did to your butthole boyfriend. You see, Carrie, a real man can walk away from a fight and know he could have won. I almost killed my little brother Billy when I was younger, and I learned to control my temper. That is what a real man does. He acts like a man. Not the crap that butthole on the floor was pulling. You made the classic mistake, Carrie. Never confuse kindness for weakness, I informed my wife. I have always treated you with love and respect. That time is over forever. Carrie, you are a cheating fool, and I want you to leave here after I am gone. I do not care where you go or what you do. If I see you in this apartment ever again, I will make what I did to your boyfriend look like kid stuff. I told her this with the most anger I have ever had towards her. She just looked at me with big saucer-shaped eyes and said nothing. I turned and left my apartment without another word. I would never touch her again, knowing Tommy Billinger put his privates in her. Never, ever. I went back to work for some strange reason. I felt like that was more like home than my own apartment now. About a half an hour later, the cops showed up and took me downtown. Word spread around work fast that I kicked some huge guy's butt and sent him to the emergency ward. I didn't get a scratch or even get a good workout with the fight I gave Tommy. I said to my boss Bill, as the police took me away in handcuffs, "You're next, you backstabbing piece of crap. I will be back." I told him this with the same anger I had towards Carrie. He looked very scared after hearing the rumors of the big guy I just beat up. I was downtown for the rest of the day until a good friend posted my bail. I returned to work and went to look for my boss. I figured since I was already in deep crap, I might as well clean house. When I got there, I was told he quit and wouldn't be coming back. The president of the company then pulled me into his office, and we had a small heart-to-heart talk. "Peter, I love your work, but you cannot go around beating people up and threatening my employees," he told me. I explained about what occurred at my apartment and all the crap my boss was doing. I even told him I had video proof he was stealing my designs and ideas. He said nothing, but just smiled. "Peter, I always knew there was something strong under that face you hide behind. Bill, your boss, was in butthole, and it was just a matter of time before he would have been gone anyway. Actually, you did me a favor. Oh, by the way, you are the only one I know who does 3 totally different designs for budget-conscious clients, which includes estimates for material and labor. As soon as Bill presented your ideas as his, I knew he was a lying piece of crap taking credit for someone else's work, yours." He told me this with an even bigger smile. "Here is the name of my lawyer. He is very good, so he should help you with your assault case as well as your divorce. When this is all over, and if you are not sitting in jail, your job will be waiting for you. Until then, you have to stay away from here until all things are settled. Tell me, Peter, did you really kick this big guy's butt who was sleeping with your wife?" he asked me with even a bigger smile. "Yeah, but it only took about 2 minutes. It wasn't much of a workout," I told him laughingly. "Okay, Peter. Good luck and keep me informed," he finally said to me as I shook his hand and left. I went back to my apartment and it was empty. Carrie had taken all her clothes and anything she needed. I didn't really care what she took. Then, in one excited, panic-filled moment, I rushed to the bedroom and looked around. Sure enough, there it was by the side of the dresser, still running, my little pocket recorder. Well, that about brings me back to my present situation, sitting in a courtroom waiting for 12 strangers to tell me where I will be eating lunch for the next 6 to 10 years. I would take what was coming to me, and didn't think I would get off on the charges. I really messed Tommy up. I was charged with several legal-sounding terms that meant basically you kicked his butt. They read a lengthy list of Tommy's injuries. It was not pleasant at all. If I started at the head and worked down, he had a big cut to his head, punctured eardrum, concussion, broken jaw, missing teeth north and south, broken shoulder, 2 broken arms, 1 broken wrist, 7 broken ribs, 1 missing testicle, 2 shattered kneecaps, 1 broken leg, 1 broken ankle, 1 sprained ankle, and 4 broken toes. Every time they brought him in court, he was in a wheelchair all bandaged up. There should have been some pity in me, but I just couldn't find any. This man just didn't warrant any. I would laugh to myself, calling him my new nickname I gave him, Toothless Tommy. I tried to be serious and calm when I was in court. The jury still had a hard time seeing me, a 5/7 design architect who weighs 185 lbs, beating this huge 6/3 big guy up so bad. I looked up, and the jury came in and sat down. The foreman remained standing. The bailiff called everyone to order, and the judge asked if the jury had reached a verdict. "Yes, we have, Your Honor," the head jury foreman told the court and the judge. "We find the defendant not guilty of all charges," he said to the room as it erupted in noise and commotion. He looked at me and gave me a wink. I had to do a double take to register what I had just seen. The president of my company then turned me around and congratulated me, telling me to take the rest of the week off and come back to work on Monday. I shook his hand and got hugs from my friends and all the well-wishers. Even Leo was there, and he congratulated me and gave Tommy the finger when he was looking over. Tommy's expression was priceless. As I left the courtroom with my lawyer, I looked at Tommy and gave him the finger myself, just to feel better. He looked like he wanted to kick my butt again, but his mind was writing checks his body couldn't cash. I smiled as I left the courtroom a free man. I looked behind me in the hallway as I was leaving, and I saw the head foreman for the jury. He motioned for me to come over and talk to him. "Mr. Huckleby, my name is Harry Peterson. I am glad to see you got off on all the charges. I felt, as did everyone on the jury, that you were acting in self-defense. On a personal note, you had nothing to worry about. That is why I took the job as foreman, so I could make sure you were set free. The video recording of the event was the proof we both needed." He confessed to me, with his voice lowered. "Why would you want to do that for me?" I asked him this, as he just smiled at me, while putting out his hand to shake mine. "Class of 1992, Mr. Huckleby at your service. I was 1 year ahead of you when you went to my high school. Tommy picked on me until my mom moved me to another school. He made my life heck for the entire time I was there. That stupid crap had bullied so many people he didn't remember me at all. I saw what he used to do to you too. He finally got what he deserved though, Peter. Good luck in the future, and remember, not all assholes come out on top. Just ask Tommy." He said this as he walked away from me with a big smile on his face. My wife came up to me just after that and wanted to know if we could talk. I told her no, and said she should move on with her life because I was going to also. "I do love you, Carrie, but I can never love you again. It hurts too bad to say in words." With that, I turned away and left her standing there in the hallway. The recording I made showed Tommy making fun of me and not leaving the apartment when I asked him to. My wife said nothing, so the jury took that to mean she agreed with me. Tommy was asked to leave a second time. Again, no response from Carrie, and then he attacked me. You can see the fight up until he gets thrown into the door frame by me. The recorder went flying face down by the dresser after that. I watched the playback and listened to the audio of when the cops came in. My wife said I started it and that I beat up Tommy for revenge. You could later hear her saying to herself how she was going to talk to me and what lies she was going to tell. I could hear her making up a new story as she went along. She never even seemed to be sorry about cheating on me. The good thing about Tommy's recording that day was that he admitted he was doing non-work duties while on the clock, so his work insurance from the apartment complex would not help him. He was beat up and shut out. I heard he had to go to a physical rehab place out of town. He would never be the same again. His family had to foot the bill also. Well, I was in for some surprises when I got back to work on that following Monday. My office was cleaned out, and my stuff was moved to my old boss Bill's office. I now had Bill's old job and was my own boss now. That was sweeter than sweet. Also around the office, the women started to take notice of me, and at least 4 came up to me my first week as boss and asked me out on a date. They asked me out. Can you believe it? I found out later that the president was telling people I was a retired special forces guy who was a spy for the government part-time between designs. The women in my office all eat it up, and I am now looked at with some kind of mystery and intrigue. Imagine that. Carrie and I are now divorced, and I have been seeing some women at work, and I few outside. I miss her, but just the thought of Tommy's privates in her is enough to never want to see her again. The women from work are really trying to please their new international spy in and out of bed. James Bond.